So then you move on to the economic relations. So when we talk about the economic relations that we need to implement, here's an economic chart implementing our economy, our own economy, implementing inherent rights in every sector of the economy, implementing our equity and ownership in every sector of the economy through our own Trade and Commerce Act, our own Land Titles Act, and Resource Act. So this is what we need to do, not forming indigenous partnerships under their laws and jurisdiction. Those are not sustainable. So if we're serious about implementing our inherent rights and treaty rights to economics, again, that's a political agenda of us having to implement our own inherent and treaty rights economy that's community-based, between communities, between our governments of our nations, and between the Canadian economy, provincial economy, the international economy. So our trade and commerce will recognize the international trade that we have under our inherent title and rights and under our inherent treaty and treaty rights. There's been a Supreme Court case, one in Quebec, by 2 members from the Six Nations that acknowledges, the judge acknowledged the inherent rights and the treaty rights we have to international trade and commerce. And that was for the tobacco trade. But the Six Nations also organized to move ahead with international trade several years ago. And you see, that's the homework we don't do to implement our economy. So if we're serious about implementing our economy, again, that's a collective duty and responsibility we have by community with our people and forming a community-based economy, and then regionally with our governments at various levels of our nations, and collectively, nationally, and internationally. And the Jay Treaty still applies today as an international treaty between the Congress in the US and the British Parliament. But our numbered treaties also provide for the same capacity of free trade and commerce internationally, of the border crossing with our special rights and status intact, and our sovereignty intact, and our inherent rights and treaty rights intact internationally. That's the portability we have. But we need to legislate, occupy the field with our own laws and jurisdiction. That includes issuing our own passports under our own Citizenship Act and laws and jurisdiction for international travel. The framework that I have identified for you recognizes all of that. The treaties, Section 35(1) recognizes that. So when we look at our own economy then, the federal government and provincial government issues a rebate or a royalty on all resource development. What's wrong with us assessing a fee, a First Nations fee on all resource development and collecting that revenue? Nothing. But we need our laws in every sector governing the field, not just by band on the reserve, but throughout our traditional lands and resource territory, our treaty territories, that occupies the field under our own inherent legal system, laws and jurisdiction, or the inherent rights and treaty rights to water, to forestry, you name it. Every sector we need to go and develop laws. The more recent one now is the high-tech industry. Where is our laws for privacy and ownership of our own data and information that we're giving away? And that's a tremendous amount of money that we're talking about. So where is our own inherent systems of our own information communications technology system, like SaskTel, Bell Canada, other corporations like that? And when we look at that process of implementation, where is our own corporate laws? Here in Saskatchewan, we have the Convention and Convention Act. And the Convention Act provides the capacity for us to put in place our own corporate law, certifying and registering our own corporations at every level. Because the Convention and Convention Act applies to every band, every chief and council of the Indian nations, and it applies to their own nations as well. But again, like I said, we're not going there, and we're not implementing that political agenda. So the economy then, we can right now form a maximum of 16 multinational corporations that would benefit our nations collectively. But we're so entrenched in indigenous economic development, indigenous joint ventures and partnerships, when those partners are not interested in supporting our economy and enforcing our inherent title and rights to our own economy and our lands, our treaty and treaty rights to our own economy, economic benefits. The Royal Proclamation of 1763 limits our hunting, fishing, trapping, gathering for food only. That's not the spirit and intent of treaty making that we entered into. That provided for our own economy to be implemented by community and by governments of our nations and our nations collectively. So everything I talk about in terms of the rights, inherent rights and treaties and treaty rights respecting economic rights and our own economy, again, that's all portable in the community, by community, between communities of our nations, and between our nations. Portable between our nations and the provincial governments. Portable between the Canadian government and the governments of our nations. Portable internationally